I had my trailer backed halfway down the grid road before Heather stepped out of the machine shed and parked the skid steer sideways across the gate. Not close to the gate, not beside it. Directly across it, bucket raised halfway, engine running hard in the cold morning air. I put my truck in park and sat there with both hands on the wheel. The skid steer was a 2019 Case SR 270. Orange paint scuffed, but solid tires still good. It belonged with me. Or at least it was supposed to, since Warren Aldridge had leased it in February under a signed agreement and paid me exactly nothing since May. 3 months. I had driven 140 kilometers from Moose Jaw on a Tuesday morning to get it back. I had the papers in my jacket pocket. I had tie-down straps in the bed, and I had burned half a tank of diesel just getting there. Heather climbed down from the cab without hurrying. Work jeans, a Carhartt vest, hair pulled back under a Ducks Unlimited cap. She wasn't built for drama. She looked like she'd been up since 5 and had already fixed 3 things before I arrived. "You're not getting that machine today," she said. I stepped out and closed my door, mourning. "I mean it." "So do I." I pulled the folder from my jacket. Warren signed the rental agreement in February. 90 days with an option to extend. He extended twice. I've been calling him since June and he hasn't answered once. I'm owed $14,200, and I'm here to collect the machine. Heather looked at the folder, the way people look at something they already know the contents of. "If that skid steer leaves this yard today," she said, "we don't finish harvest. And if we don't finish harvest, we lose the farm." I let out a breath. The air smelled like canola dust and diesel, and the kind of dry August that meant good yields if you could get the equipment to cooperate. I looked past her at the fields. Canola was standing yellow and thick, maybe 3 days from swathing if someone got moving. "That's not my problem to carry," I said. "I know it isn't." She didn't flinch. "I'm not saying it is." That stopped me. Most people I dealt with in this situation came at me with stories. The bank held a payment, the crop came in short, a family emergency, a bad check. Heather didn't do that. She stood on her own driveway, blocking me with a leased machine, and said the truth like it cost her to say it. "I've got my own bills," I said. "I've got a payment on my own shop equipment. I've got insurance. I can't keep equipment out in the field for people who won't answer the phone." "I know." She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Graph paper, the kind from a school notebook, covered in neat small handwriting. "I know what Warren owes you. I know what's sitting with Farm Credit. I know which supplier in Swift Current won't extend another line of credit. And I know the only money coming in before October is from this harvest." I looked at the paper, then back at her. She stepped closer and held it out, not begging, just direct. 30 days, she said. I didn't take it yet. 30 days for what? Not a favor, not an extension. She tapped the paper with one finger. "We swath the east quarter first. It's the closest to ready. I've got a buyer at the elevator in Assiniboia who'll take the canola if we deliver clean and dry. There's also a quarter section of wheat that needs to come off before the moisture climbs. You help me get through the next 30 days, and you get paid first from the canola check. Before Farm Credit, before the co-op account." I almost laughed, not because it was ridiculous, because it was the most organized thing anyone had ever handed me, while simultaneously refusing to let me do my job. "You want me to do more work," I said, "for a farm that already owes me for the last 3 months of work." "I want you to work with me," she said, "not him." Write in the comments. Was I right to trust Heather's plan? Or was I making a mistake a man my age should have known better than to make? The machine shed door opened behind her, and Warren Aldridge finally came out. He was somewhere in his mid-40s, a little soft around the middle, wearing a ball cap from a John Deere dealership he'd never actually bought a machine from. He walked out like the morning was inconveniencing him. "Hey buddy," he raised a hand in my direction. "Come on, let's not make this a whole thing." I didn't answer. He looked at Heather, then at the skid steer, then at my trailer. "Just move it, babe. I'll sort this out." Her jaw tightened. She didn't move. Warren gave me a smile, the kind that works on people who want to believe everything's fine. "She worries. You know how it is. Heather, just let the man by." I hated the way he said it. Friendly on the surface, dismissive underneath, like she was a door he needed to open and had forgotten the handle for. "You told me in May the harvest advance was coming through," I said to him. "It didn't. You told me in June the FCC payment would free up the operating line. It didn't. You told me you'd drop a check at my shop 3 weeks ago. You didn't." He spread his hands. "It's been a tough run, man." Heather was looking at the gravel. Then she looked back at me. 30 days, she said again. "Written terms, payment schedule, no changes through him. You keep the skid steer on the yard, and I use it to finish harvest. If the first payment isn't in your account by September 15th, you come back and take it, no argument. Warren took a step forward. Now hang on a. Heather turned to him. No. The yard went quiet. A meadowlark somewhere in the ditch, the skid steer engine ticking. I took the graph paper from her. The numbers were real. Field size in hectares, estimated bushel count, elevator price per ton, delivery window, deductions forecast. My name was at the top of the payment list, circled in red pen. She had done the math. Warren had done the damage. I folded the paper and put it in my folder. I'll write up a proper agreement, you sign it, he doesn't. Warren stepped forward. It's my operation. Heather looked at him. Then start running it. I went back to my truck, got a blank contract form from the glove box, and wrote the terms on the hood while Heather stood beside me. Warren paced near the shed but didn't come close enough to stop it. When she signed, her hand didn't shake. I loaded my straps back into the truck bed and pulled the trailer around the skid steer rather than toward it. Heather watched from the yard, arms crossed. I drove away without the machine I'd come to collect. Her signed agreement was on the passenger seat, and for the first time all morning I couldn't tell if I'd just made the smartest call of my season, or set myself up for the longest 30 days of my year. By 7 the next morning, Heather was already in the field on the swather when I pulled up in my service truck. I'd made a point of leaving the trailer at home. A trailer said I was there to take. The service truck said I was there to work. She noticed when I stepped out. No trailer? Don't make me regret it. I won't. The first problem came before we'd finished the east quarter. The swather's draper belt had a hairline crack, running along the edge where the tension was highest. I flagged her down and she climbed out without being asked, crouched beside the belt, ran her thumb along the crack. How long? She said. Before it goes, a day, maybe less. Do you have one in the truck? I checked. Right width, wrong length. Closest match is back at my shop in Moose Jaw. She stood, pulled out her phone, checked something, put it away. Flamens in Assiniboia might have it. That's 70 kilometers. I know where Assiniboia is. We drove together. She called Flamens from the road and they had one belt left. The last one they'd ordered before the harvest rush hit. She'd thought to call ahead. I hadn't. That was how the first week went. Not ideal, not smooth, but real. We fixed what we could with what we had, made do when we couldn't, and kept moving. Heather drove the swather like she'd learned on it as a kid. Not fast, not careless, reading the field the way you read something you've memorized. She knew where the low spots stayed wet, where the gumbo would grab a tire, where the old fence line used to cut before her father pulled it out. I followed behind in the evenings, checking windrows, making notes. She didn't hover, and she didn't pretend to need help she didn't need. When I was checking the header one afternoon, she handed me the right socket before I'd asked for it. When I over-tightened a tension bolt, she said, "Back it off half a turn or it'll strip before Thursday." I looked at her. You always correct strangers working on your equipment? When they're about to break something I need, yes. I backed it off half a turn, she was right. 2 days later, the auger seized. We were moving the first swath canola to the bin and the tube locked up. Bearings dry, shaft hot enough to smell. Heather was there before I'd finished shutting it down. Bearing, she said. Bearing, I confirmed. We spent 2 hours on our knees in the dirt pulling it apart. Dust on everything. August heat rising off the ground. The replacement bearing came from the co-op in Gravelborg, 30 minutes away, and we lost the afternoon. Standing by the bin at dusk, Heather looked at the field like she was counting daylight she didn't have. We do the north field first tomorrow, she said. I shook my head. South field's drier, hit it first then circle back. The north is cleaner, less green. The buyer in Assiniboia docks for moisture. The south loses grade if it sits 2 more days. I pointed at the horizon, where the sky had that yellow tinge that meant humidity moving in. That front is closer than the forecast says. She looked mad enough to argue. Then she pulled out her phone, checked the Ag Weather app, put it back. Fine, she said. I raised my eyebrows. Don't make a big deal of it, she said. I wasn't. You were thinking about it. Briefly. The first bin filled by Thursday. The second by Saturday morning. Not perfect, not without a fight, but real. Heather stood looking at the gauge with both hands in her vest pockets. The way you stand when you want to believe the numbers but aren't ready to yet. Warren showed up right as we were hitching the grain cart for the elevator run. He walked out of the house with a coffee mug, and the particular walk of a man who's been watching through the window, and decided to appear once the hard part was done. Good work, he said, looking at the bin. Place is finally moving. Heather didn't answer. He looked at me. You two make quite a team. There was something under it, not quite an accusation. More like a man noticing control had moved somewhere he hadn't put it, trying to make it feel cheap so he could take it back. I checked the hitch pin and stood up. We've been working. He smiled at Heather. That all it is? Her face went flat. Warren, she said, the bins are full because I showed up and Clay showed up. That's all you need to know. He didn't answer. He looked at the grain cart, looked at the house, and walked back inside. I climbed into the truck. Heather got in the passenger side with the elevator tickets on her lap. As we pulled down the grid road, the skid steer sat in the yard behind us. Still leased, still working, still the center of everything. But the first grain load was moving. And for the first time since I'd pulled that trailer down the grid road, the 30-day plan felt like more than paper. The elevator run should have been the easy part. I kept telling myself that as we pulled onto the highway toward Assiniboia, with 15 tons of canola behind us. Heather had the elevator contract out and was reading it in a way that was too focused for a document she'd already read. Something wrong? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She flipped to the back page, checked a number, flipped forward. The deposit confirmation letter. It should be in the sleeve. That comes separate. Should be at the house. She looked at me. Her voice stayed even, but her jaw was set. Warren asked me this morning where we were delivering. I kept my eyes on the road. He never asks, she said. We drove 3 kilometers before she called Murray at the elevator. I'd dealt with Murray before, a careful man, fair, not given to drama. Murray, it's Heather Aldridge. We're 20 minutes out with the first load. I need to confirm one thing. Has anyone contacted you about changing the payment details on our account? A pause. When? Another pause. No, do not process that. The payment needs to go to the farm operating account, same as always. I handled the growing, I handled the harvest, and I am delivering this load. She listened. Thank you, we'll be there soon. She lowered the phone, looked out the window. He called yesterday afternoon, she said. Asked them to redirect the deposit to a personal account. One I don't have access to. I tightened my grip on the wheel. His personal checking, she said, which he opened last spring without telling me. The prairie ahead was flat and wide open. I wanted to say something useful, but there wasn't much that was. Do we still deliver? I asked. Heather sat up straighter. Yes, and then we go to the bank. Murray was a gray-haired man in a canvas jacket who came out with a clipboard and looked at us carefully. Heather was out of the truck before I'd fully stopped. Before we unload, she said, I need the payment confirmed to the farm operating account, not the account someone may have called about yesterday. Murray glanced at me, then back at her. Warren said he was handling the financial side going forward. Heather didn't blink. Warren didn't seed this field. Warren didn't call you when the draper belt cracked. Warren didn't find that bearing before the auger seized. She paused. I did. This is my delivery. Murray looked uncomfortable in the way of a man who'd dealt with enough farm families to know when to step out of the middle. The account on the original contract is the farm operating account, he said carefully. That's what I've got on file. Heather's shoulders dropped just slightly. That's what I need. Payment won't clear until tomorrow morning, though. There's a flag on the file now that I have to clear with head office. That's fine, she said. Hold it until I confirm with the bank. We unloaded, got Murray's signature, drove back. At the TD branch in Gravelbourg, Warren was already there. That told me everything. He was standing near the service desk, cap in hand, talking to the customer rep in the easy way that looks like courtesy and works like pressure. When he saw Heather walk through the door, his face moved through 3 things in quick order. Surprise, calculation, then the smile. Heather. He spread his hands. You didn't need to come in. Yes, I did. His eyes moved to me. He drove you in for this? I'm here about my first payment, I said. He gave a short laugh. Sure you are. Heather stepped toward the counter and spoke to the rep directly. I need dual authorization on any changes to our farm account payment destinations, effective today. My signature required alongside my husband's. The rep looked from Heather to Warren and back. Mrs. Aldridge, for dual authorization on a single signatory account, we'd need supporting documentation. Do you have your account agreements? Heather set a folder on the counter. She'd had it in the truck the whole time without me noticing. Warren's smile slipped. You're making a scene, he said. I'm making a request, she said to the rep. Heather, he lowered his voice, this is embarrassing. She kept her eyes on the rep and kept talking, clear and even walking through the account. Details the way a person walks through a room they know well. Warren turned to me. You've been at my property every day for 2 weeks. People talk in a town this size. You think they're not talking? I felt heat in my neck, but Heather turned her head slightly, just enough, and I understood. Then Warren said the thing that made the whole lobby feel smaller. You should have just kept things friendly with her until the check cleared. I looked at him directly. I don't collect debt through someone's wife. He opened his mouth and closed it. Heather didn't look at me, but her hands stopped moving on the folder for 1 second, then started again. The branch manager came out a few minutes later, and Heather laid everything on his desk. The elevator contract, the delivery receipt from Murray, the rental agreement with her signature, the farm credit documentation showing the operating account, a screenshot of the routing number Warren had tried to change. She spoke without rushing. I want dual authorization required on any outgoing payment changes from this account. I want this equipment debt documented as first priority from the Assiniboia deposit, and I want a note on file that I am the authorized contact for all farm sale deposits. Warren sat across the table. You're choosing him over me. Heather looked tired then, not soft. Just tired in the way of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time, and has finally decided to set it down. You chose debt over this farm first, she said. A long time ago. He stared at her like he didn't know what to do, with a sentence he couldn't smooth over. The bank sent us to the Farm Credit Canada office in Moose Jaw to update the authorization paperwork. Warren followed in his truck, too proud to let it go, too stuck to do anything useful. At the FCC office he tried once more, telling the agent it was his name on the land title. Heather put both hands flat on the counter. My name is on the operating account, my signature is on the elevator contract. My work is in those bins. The agent checked the files, made 2 calls, and updated the authorization before end of business. The stamp on the form was small and ordinary. It felt larger than it was. Warren walked out first. In the parking lot he turned on me. Happy now? I shook my head. This isn't my fight to win. Then I looked at Heather. It's yours. She held the folder against her chest, not hiding behind it, like it was finally something solid to hold on to. Warren waited for her to follow him to his truck. She got in mine instead and shut the door. The deposit cleared the next morning. Murray's office released the payment to the farm operating account at 8:47 a.m. My portion came through at 9:03. I know because I was pulling into my shop yard in Moose Jaw when my phone buzzed on the seat. I sat in the truck and looked at the number. Not everything Warren owed me. Not close, but it was real money from a real delivery, sent exactly the way Heather had written it on that graph paper. I called her right away. Did you see it? She asked. I saw it. Good. There was noise behind her, a tractor idling, the distant sound of a combine running. Where are you? I asked. Northfield, started at 6. You went without calling. You had your own work. Heather. I paused. The combine reel, it's been pulling left. I noticed it 2 days ago. Don't push it hard until I look at it. A short silence. How long will that take? 20 minutes. 40 if it's worse than I think. Then get here. By the time I arrived, she'd already stopped the combine and was standing on the platform, looking at the reel with her arms crossed. She had a streak of hydraulic fluid across her wrist and didn't appear to have noticed. Left side's riding low, she said when I climbed up beside her. Tension on the tine shaft, I checked it. Not the reel itself, that's easier. Can you fix it now? Already fixing it. She watched me work for a moment, then looked out at the field. The wheat was gold and heavy, the kind of stand you want to show people. The sky above the prairies was that particular shade of late August blue, deep and clean and wide. Thank you, she said quietly, not making a thing of it. I kept working. For what part? The bank, the FCC office, standing there. That wasn't for you, I said. I needed that payment to clear. She almost smiled. You're a bad liar. I'm a serviceable liar. You're just paying attention. The reel adjustment took 30 minutes. We lost the morning, not the day. By afternoon the combine was cutting straight, and the wheat was coming off dry enough to go direct to the bin. That last load was the hardest. The combine went down twice, a rock strike on the concave, then a belt wrap in the residue system. We worked until the light was nearly gone, fixing the second one. Kneeling in chaff dust under work lights, neither of us saying much. When the engine finally started clean, and the machine moved back into the standing wheat, Heather sat back on the ground and looked up at the sky. Say something useful, she said. Belt's clear, concave's set. You've got maybe 4 hours of field left. That's not what I meant. I know. I sat down beside her in the stubble. You're going to be okay. She was quiet for a while. The farm is going to be okay. That's what I said. She looked at me then. Not soft, not fragile. Level, the kind of look you give someone when you've decided something but aren't going to say it yet. The final field came off on a Friday evening. Heather sent the last elevator ticket to Murray's office, confirmed the final payment to my account, and forwarded copies to Farm Credit. The total from that month's work didn't make anyone rich. It didn't erase the old loans or turn the Aldridge place back into what it had been before Warren started signing tomorrow away. But the feed account got paid down. My equipment debt got settled properly. The bank had Heather's signature locked into every outgoing payment. Farm Credit had her listed as the authorized contact. Warren could still come around and call it his operation, but he couldn't move money without her seeing it. For the first time since I'd backed that trailer down the grid road, Heather had more than a plan. She had control. Warren left the following week. Not far, his brother had space outside Swift Current, and Warren packed 2 bags, his fishing gear, and most of the pride he had left. He told Heather she'd be calling him within a month when the equipment broke down, and there was no one around who knew how to deal with it. She stood on the step with her arms crossed. I'll call a mechanic, she said. He drove off down the grid road in a dust cloud. I stayed away after that. Not because I wanted to, because I did, and that was the problem. For 30 days, Heather and I had been shoulder to shoulder in fields, bins, trucks, offices, and elevator yards. I knew she counted the ton yield in her head while Murray weighed the loads. She knew I got quiet when I was running numbers and didn't like the answer. We'd shared bad thermos coffee, noon hours in the combine cab, eating co-op deli sandwiches, and enough hard mornings that strangers had become something else. Nothing I was ready to name yet, but something. She was still coming out of a marriage. I was still the man she'd negotiated with instead of paying. When she texted to ask about swath roller rates for spring, I sent her the quote. When she called about custom baling contacts, I gave her 2 names. When she sent a message one evening that said only, "You don't have to stay gone," I read it 3 times before I answered. I'm not staying gone, I'm keeping it straight. Her reply came a minute later, I know. A few weeks passed. Harvest was done across most of the province. The roads were quiet, the fields had that brown empty look they get in September after everything's off, and the air had the particular cold edge that means the season has turned for real. I drove out to the Aldridge place on a Tuesday morning. No trailer, service truck, a replacement hydraulic line on the seat, 2 large double-doubles from Tim Hortons in the cup holders, and a printed work order on the clipboard. Heather was at the gate when I pulled up. Boots dusty, sleeves rolled, hair back under the same Ducks Unlimited cap she'd been wearing the morning she blocked me with the skid steer. The yard felt different than that first day, not holding its breath anymore. Just a farm in early fall, quiet and steady. I stepped out and handed her the coffee. Official call, I said, holding up the work order. She took it and read the rate. You brought paperwork. Always. And coffee. That's not on the invoice. She looked toward the machine shed where the skid steer sat with the hydraulic line weeping slow. I nodded at it. Still need that sorted before the ground freezes? Heather looked back at me. The morning was cool and pale blue the way Saskatchewan mornings get when the season is tipping toward winter. She smiled, not careful, not managed. Easy the way things are when you've stopped needing to hold them together by force. Only if you're charging full rate, she said. I picked up my toolbox and walked beside her through the gate. For you, I said, always.